Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about Karl Germain. Karl Germain, this book right here, published, I believe, by the Miracle Factory. The Miracle Factory is Mike Caveney's publishing company. This particular book, Jermaine the Wizard, was written by Stuart Kramer. Stuart Kramer, if you did not know, was an amateur magician. Toward the end of Jermaine's life, he endeared himself to Jermaine. He was with Jermaine when he passed and in the final days of his life, and he was able to acquire a lot of knowledge directly from the wizard. There's an interesting little anecdote I'd like to tell you. Karl Germain did not want his secrets published. He did not want his story told. He was not a man like a lot of other magicians. He was not a man who really sought to create a myth, to create a legend. He really wanted it left alone. And he threatened to haunt Stuart Kramer if he ever published the books. But after Jermaine's death, Stuart Kramer went on to publish 2 books. And they're contained in here. It's edited by Todd Carr in association with Ken Klosterman. It's lavishly illustrated. I absolutely love the book. If you're thinking about getting it, if you have an interest in Jermaine, by all means pick this thing up. I just adore it. One of the things I love about Mike Caveney's work, Mike Caveney just loves the art of the early magic posters. So in all of Mike Caveney's books and all of his creations, you get the magic posters. Now back in this day, this was the golden age, folks. Back in the golden age, they used these lithographic posters to promote. They would send advance men into town in ahead of the show. The advance men would literally canvass the town with these posters to generate interest in the coming show. Then very often the performer would arrive a little bit early before the show would begin. The performer would do publicity stunts in town to generate some interest in the show. And that's how they promoted the shows in the golden age. But as you can see, the book is lavishly illustrated. The secrets of Jermaine are in the book. So if you have an interest in that, by all means pick it up. Jermaine's story, I am very fond of Jermaine, not so much for the magic he did as the persona he presented. The guy, to look at him, you're just filled with wonder, because he really presented as a wizard, and I appreciate that. So listen, I forget who asked me to do the presentation on Jermaine. I know you specifically wanted to ask about the book. This is the definitive work on Jermaine. So if you're interested in Jermaine's life, by all means pick this up. Now I actually have 3 pages of notes here. I hate sitting here and reading to people. I don't like to do that, but I do want to share a few things with you about Karl Germain, also known as Jermaine the Wizard. He was born Charles Mattmueller on February 12th, 1878. He crossed over August 9th, 1959. So this man was a golden age performer. He came of age in magic during the Victorian period. He carried the banner forward. He was a contemporary of Keller, Thurston, Houdini, Blackstone. And this guy competed with them and did a great job. The name Karl, K-A-R-L, came about during his school years. His name was actually Charles, but he had many people in his class that were named Charles, so his teacher decided to call him Karl with a K, and it stuck. Once he started to perform in 1899, there was a press release He actually spelled his name Jermaine, Jermaine with an E on the end. That's how he wanted his name to be presented, but there was a press release and there was an error in the printing and the E was left off of the name, and so the name Jermaine stuck. And by the way, he is of German ancestry. I don't know that that has much to do with the name, but he's of German ancestry. His magic is a mix of conjuring, magical effects, mind reading, and grand illusion. So to me, that's what I do, by the way. I will mix. I'm primarily a mentalist, I'm primarily a mind reader, but I will mix conjuring and magic in with it because I present mentalism as magic. So I'm totally comfortable doing that. And many of the performers in the Golden Age did exactly that. They didn't make the hard and fast distinctions that performers make today. You're either a mentalist or you're a magician, and you can't do both. Well, Karl Germain did both, and he did it quite well, and many people of the Golden Age did. As I read this biography, I was struck by the similarity. You know, a person's personality comes across in their biography. If the biography is well written, then this one is. I was struck by the similarity between Karl Germain and Tommy Wonder. And let me tell you why. Tommy Wonder was the most devoted person to his craft of any person I know. Tommy Wonder wanted nothing short of perfection in the things that he chose to do. And that's exactly the way Karl Germain approaches his art. He was original, he was creative, and he was a perfectionist in much the same way Tommy Wonder is in our time. So that will strike you. At the age of 8, young Charles Mattmueller presented an impromptu version of the Spirit Cabinet for 2 of his schoolmates. Charles was tied with ropes and locked inside of a bread cabinet. A short time later, knocks and raps were heard coming from the cabinet, frightening the onlookers. And people aren't really sure how he did that or how he came by that knowledge, but he had a natural instinct for performing. And this is one of the formative lessons of his life, formative experiences of his life that inspired him to later go on and become a magician. His interest was also fueled by his dad. Now, this story is a lot like my story. I grew up with a father who didn't do magic, but who loved magic. His dad, my grandfather, used to take him to the Blackstone show. Whenever Blackstone was in town, they were there to see him. And my dad, as I grew up, my dad told me story after story, again and again and again, about Blackstone. And I sat there and I imagined what that was like. That's exactly what Karl Germain's dad did. He told his son story after story after story. Finally, when Germain was 14 years old, his dad gave him a copy of Modern Magic by Professor Hoffman. He studied that book thoroughly. He became a magician because of his early experiences, because of his dad's stories, because of modern magic. He went into magic. Now, he's famous for doing a number of mysteries. I have the mysteries written out here. I don't think I'm gonna share all those with you. They're all chronicled in this book. The effects he was famous for. What I will say is that his methods were straightforward. Okay, he had one effect in which he had a board. Imagine this, because nobody's doing it today. He had a board, and he had a block of wood, and he would push that block of wood through the board anywhere, virtually anywhere, in different places, and these things were examinable. So, and he did it in such a way. I'm gonna hold this paper over this side because this is where the secret's revealed. But I want you to see this image. He's pushing this block of wood through this plank in various places right here. The reason I want to share that with you is that his magic is extremely visual. He didn't cover things the way a lot of performers do. And another of his great illusions is the blooming rose bush. As you can see here in this sequence of images, you see how this rose bush glows. You can see through this table. He fans it with a fan and it grows. I mean, has anyone ever done anything like that before or since? I don't think so. And another effect that he did, was he would go into a basket on the stage and then later appear coming down the aisle. And this was one of the first of that type of illusion to be done. So my point is, this is an incredibly creative performer. He prided himself on being original and on creating original material. On May 9th, 1949, Germain spoke before the SAM Assembly Number 10. The speech that he gave, the transcript for the speech, was published in the May 2002 issue of Genii Magazine. And what he told the crowd at the SAM was that to be an artist, you must be original, and to be original, you must be yourself. There is only one you. You have values, you have opinions, you have things outside of magic that you enjoy. Bring those into magic. If you do any standard routines, bring your other interest in and reflect that interest in those performances, and you will be original. Stuart Kramer, the author of this book, was an amateur magician in the later years of Karl Germain's life. They became good friends. Stuart spent a lot of time with Karl Germain. He was with him at the end. August 9th, 1959, Stuart Kramer was with Jermaine in the hospital in his final days. Jermaine was 81 years old when he passed away. By the way, I didn't tell you this story. I should go back and do it just so that the story is recorded. For many years, Karl Germain worked with his sister Ida in the act. They did a mind reading routine together. January 30th, 1910, Ida died from a tumor on her spine, and Karl Germain began to evaluate. He looked at his priorities differently. Am I spending my life? Am I investing my life well in magic, or is there something else that I should be doing? He decided to become a lawyer. In 1910, he attended Western Reserve Law School. And he trained someone else, a guy named Paul Fleming, to hit the road as Paul Germain and perform his act. In 1914, Karl Germain became a lawyer and opened a practice in Cleveland, Ohio. 1914. In 1916, he decided he didn't want to stay away from magic. So he got back into magic with a new tour, but this time he developed a tumor in his brain, and it pressed against the optic nerve. He had to have surgery. For a while after the surgery, he was completely blind. He did gain some vision back. But in 1938, while he was crossing an intersection, he was struck by a vehicle, and at that point, he was completely blind. So for the latter part of his life, he was completely blind. He passed away on August 9th, 1959. He lived 81 years. For 43 of those 81 years, he was either partially or fully blind. Stuart Kramer published the works that now give us the information that we have on Karl Germain. Again, I don't remember who asked me to do this. Thank you so much, though. It's always a good idea to present information on these very significant historic figures. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please comment down below. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day. Take care.